Let's go over the tools you'll need to complete this job. To start off, you'll need a pair of 14mm sockets and ratchet wrenches, or just a pair of 14mm wrenches. These will be used to remove the stock engine bolts. For installing the slider hardware, we will need one 17mm socket and one 17mm wrench, as well as an 8mm, 5mm, and 4mm Allen key attachment for ratchet wrenches. You will also need torque wrenches that can adapt to all the bits above. They're capable of doing 33 foot-pounds or 45 newton meters and 12 foot-pounds or 16 newton meters. In my case, I have a Pittsburgh half-inch drive torque wrench that ranges from 20 to 150 foot-pounds, as well as a 1/4 inch drive torque wrench that ranges from 2 to 18 foot-pounds. It is strongly advised that you torque everything to spec, as the sliders may not perform correctly in a crash, or there may be damage done to your bike if not torqued properly. Both clicker wrenches can be had at Harbor Freight for $40 for both of them, so it's really worth it if you're doing your own bike maintenance, plus you get the job done right. Plus, $40 is a lot cheaper than having a professional fix your mistakes when you don't torque everything correctly. You will also need a jack of some kind to support the engine when the bolts are removed. I use the jack in the trunk of my car. It is a good idea to use some rubber or cardboard between the jack and engine as padding. This helps to reduce the chances of the engine being damaged during this process. The last thing you'll need is medium thread locker, which should be applied to all bolts throughout this process. This is done to keep the bolts from vibrating out over time. So if I don't specify to add thread locker in a specific step, do it anyway. So the first thing you're going to want to do is put the bike on a center stand, because you want the engine as straight up as possible. And you're also going to want to take off the right and left fairing, which I've done so. I'm not going to show you how to do that. I'll link some other videos where you can get a good in-depth on how to do that. There's also a really good guide in the owner's manual on how to do it. And you can label the bolts A, B, C, D, just to make sure they're all going in the right place, because there's some different ones. You get that. Also, you're going to want a jack of some kind, because you remove the engine bolts and it starts moving up and down. So there's going to be a center bolt right here that goes all the way through the engine, and then one on this side. I've already had it removed from this side, but you only want to do one side at a time. And you're going to have a jack with some like rubber underneath to support it, so you can move the engine up and down if it does move, so you can align the holes. And here is the other side with the bolts, and that's the lower one right there that goes all the way through. Alright, so to start off, we have these pieces, which are where the sliders are going to mount to. The fairings won't go over while these pucks are on, so you can leave the pucks for now. But basically, you're going to take these, as far as I can tell, it doesn't matter which way they are, as long as this part is down towards the bottom, because that's how these mount. You're going to basically take these and two of these bolts, and you're going to put some medium thread locker and put them up through. So as an example here, here's the slider mount that'll fit on the left side of the bike. They drilled out the holes nice for you in this little concave, so you know which way they're going to go. This is basically going to be on the inside of the bike, and this is going to be facing out. So you just get two of these, line them up, and put the little puck mounts on them. Alright, so after you've installed this bar, you also want to add thread locker to this bolt right here. It sits in the frame. So this guy you'll leave loose. These two guys you're going to tighten to 12 foot-pounds according to the directions. So just be sure to do that. And just when you take this off, just be sure to leave them on the right side, because these little wedges inside matter with how they fit in the frame. So just give it a little bit of medium strength thread locker, add this on, leave it loose, and should be good to go for later. Alright, so now we have our left assembled mount. So I'm going to show you how it's roughly going to fit on. So these plastic rings go on this part of the frame and protect it from these guys mounting on there. So there's a little slit right here. So you just kind of have to bend them and slide them on. They're a little tricky, but with enough finesse and a little force, you'll work. So basically, Just slide this guy on here. Might have to loosen it up a little bit to get around. But basically you're going to slide that on there. Line up the holes right there. A quick note with installing the frame protection sleeves. Be sure the splits in the sleeves are not being clamped by the slider mount. I did not consider this when installing the protection sleeves on the right side of my bike, causing the rings to not sit properly on the frame. In contrast, I had them installed correctly on the left side of the frame, resulting in them seating properly and fully protecting the frame. So consider this when installing your rings. Alright, so I have the left one loosely fit. We have the triangles with the little protectors on them just sitting up there. We also have the top bolt, the little one, and then that through bolt that goes all the way through. And with this one you have bolt, washer, and then the brace, and then inside there's this washer or fit. So with that you just want to finger tight so we can get the other side mounted correctly. If you're threading in this one and it's not going in easily, you need to stop and make sure the engine's aligned, because that's a good way to strip a screw and or even your mount, and that's no fun. So I have the left side fit. A little update. So this little engine hanger that goes with this bolt was bending in just because the jack wasn't supporting it. The other screw that's identical to this one wasn't screwing in, so I swapped them, and now they're both in, almost tight enough, loose enough that this can have a little more play, because we're not supposed to tighten this yet. But if you're having difficulties with these top bolts, try switching them around. It might help you. So now in the direction it says to test fit the plastics, I'm just going to send it and hope the plastics fit. If not, I'll let you know if I regret it. But yeah, so next you put another bolt on here, so flat side towards the engine, so like that. And I'll show you a setup with how I get the torque with that. Alright, so here's the setup I have for tightening that bottom engine bolt. So basically when you loosen it, you can have the wrench on top of here with some sort of soft padding. Right now I have a what are those things are called? Yeah, a car scrubber. But since you have to tighten it right hand, and the other bolt on the air side is the one that works the best, I had someone sit on the seat and then tighten it to 33 foot-pounds. So that's what you want to do with this bolt as well as this bolt, and then once those are up to spec, you tighten these to 12 foot-pounds. So overall, I think this kit works pretty well. It's rather easy to install. You just gotta reach out to support if you need the directions, because they don't include them. And as far as the record date for this, they don't have a how-to video on their YouTube. I didn't do any test fitting for the plastics. I just put them on, they happened to work. The only issue I ran into was the lower cowl. Had a little difficulty fitting around the mount with this bolt being up higher. But if you do this first bolt and then the rear one, it should be pretty easy. Plastic's flexible. So with these frame mounts here, it makes these front plastics a lot harder to take off and put on, because generally when you take it off, they say pull it out and down towards the bike, but there isn't too much clearance here with this bar, so you basically run into it and you kind of have to bend the lower bits to get to the mount down there and help it get down. I feel like that would be consistent with other frame sliders, because they mount in the same spot. So I think this kit works pretty well. I'll have to give a follow-up if I end up using them, but in the meantime, hope you found this useful.